Isn't it time you turned the tables and started using refusal and rejection for your benefit? I know this is hard, but it is a reality in the profession of sales. And it's a reality in life. You know, no matter how good we are, or how excellent we perform, or how brilliant our execution is in anything, rejection and refusal and hearing no and some sort of negative response still is a potential reality. Now, I guess this should be no surprise since we live in a world that can be harsh and negative sometimes. In fact, many times we find ourselves in situations where the world is not forgiving. It's not easy, and it's not so simple. And unfortunately, refusal and rejection and negativity and hearing no are fairly commonplace. In fact, for example, I read an article that the average 18-year-old child in most cultures hears no or some variation over 200,000 times. Now, that's interesting. Let's do a little bit of math, because you might have seen this particular statistic, and I've seen it many times, but I never broke it down on how much negativity that really is. So let's take 200,000, and let's divide 200,000 simply by 18 years. What do we get? We get over 11,000 no's or variations of no's per year. And of course, if we break that down by 365 days, we're talking about over 30 times we will hear no or some sort of negative response every single day. In fact, that's more than one an hour. I mean, my gosh, no wonder so many people feel trapped or feel helpless or feel that they're stuck in their rut in their life. I understand that it can be difficult, especially in sales, when you hear no and I want to wait and hear all these negative objections and responses from customers. But nevertheless, if we're going to be successful in sales or in life, we've got to deal with this issue of rejection and refusal head on. Now, I realize that's a little bit scary, but there's no other way to deal with rejection than face to face. The first thing that we've got to realize if we're going to talk about successfully overcoming rejection and refusal is simply that nobody's perfect. You're not, and I'm not. Now understand that is not an excuse to be a failure, nor is it an excuse to be mediocre. But I do believe that there's great power in accepting the fact that if you're not perfect, it gives us the opportunity to realize that we can always improve and we can always be better. So before we even take a look at how we can overcome rejection and refusal, you've got to realize that you're not perfect, but you can get more perfect every day if you decide to. Now that's a choice. It's a choice you have to make. Not one that I can suggest, not one somebody can motivate you into making, but it's got to be a choice that you make yourself. Here's the key. No one can overcome all rejection and refusal in sales. However, all salespeople can use rejection and use refusal to their advantage and keep both of them from creating a negative and debilitating effect on their future. Now, I do realize that does sound like a fairy tale, and it might not sound real. However, you're probably thinking in your mind, all right, I'd like to believe it, but John, how do you do that? How do you use rejection and refusal in a positive way? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I do have a few strategies for you. Strategy number one, open up to rejection. Now, what do I mean by open up to rejection? It's real simple. Most of the time, most of us believe that rejection is always something that's negative. Now, I'm sure you remember when you were a child, your parents told you not to stick your finger in electricity, or play in the street, or, talk to strangers. These are all forms of rejection or refusal or hearing some sort of no that were actually positive. In fact, they might have kept you alive and kept you safe while you were growing up. So understand that not always is rejection or refusal or hearing no necessarily a negative thing. In fact, let me give you an example. There was a study that was done many, many years ago in New York City. There was somebody on the side of the street and they were handing out free $100 bills. Believe it or not, many people did not take the $100 bills. They couldn't believe that something would be free. So not always are you going to sell everyone you talk to. It's just as simple as that. And not always is someone saying no to you a bad thing. I can tell you this. There are many customers that have told me over the years no, or they haven't bought from me. And in retrospect, I'll tell you something. I'm glad I didn't work with them. I've got a customer right now that is going through the process of bankruptcy. And had I begun the relationship that we had planned, I'd definitely have problems right now. So I want you to think about rejection, first of all, as something that's not positive or negative, but neutral. Think of it as something that could have positive possibilities. Now, of course, you're going to have to find the positives, and that's part of what overcoming rejection is all about. Strategy number 2, learn from this. Okay, you got rejected, or somebody refused, or somebody told you no. Take a step back and ask yourself one simple question. Why? Now, maybe one why is not enough. The Japanese actually have a strategy that they call the 5 whys, where they believe if you ask yourself why 5 times, you can solve almost any problem. I don't know if it works every time, but it's a good idea. And very often, that's exactly what I've learned to do. Here's the thing I just said, though, that you have to pick up that's important. It's something that I've learned to do. Look, if you're going to be able to positively overcome and benefit from rejection and refusal, you're going to have to realize you're going to have to develop some new habits. So anytime somebody rejects you or refuses you or says no, real simple, step back, ask yourself why. And most importantly, ask yourself at the end of your 1 why or 27 whys, what can you learn from this? Because every time you hear no, every time you get rejection, every time you hear a refusal, you definitely can learn something from the process. The question is whether or not you want to take the time and devote the energy to do that. This episode continues next week on Sold. Here's a sneak preview. If we would just do this and learn to listen in and focus in on the customer, not only would we understand them better and build better relationships, but I also think that we would probably reduce the amount of rejection, refusal, and the amount of no's we get. Understand that, yes, one of the reasons why you might get rejection or hear no is because of you. But here's the great thing. Look, if you've got problems or you've got a situation where you're hearing no very often, or you're getting a lot of rejection, you're getting a lot of refusal, there's no shame in asking for help. When you hear no, when you are rejected, when you get refusal, take a step back and not only learn from it, but ask yourself this question. How can I come up with an innovative solution to this problem? Because that's what it is. Strategy number 4, ask more and better questions. Very, very often, salespeople don't ask enough questions to really understand and see a full 360 degrees around the selling situation that they find themselves in. I cannot tell you how many times. Don't miss it.